let's take a look at Alexander Vodstik's career, sort of the peak of his career, as kind of a touchstone to look at a couple of bigger issues that surround boxing. So, Alexander became a world champion at the light heavyweight division by defeating Adonis Stevenson, who held the belt. Now, tragically, after the fight, Adonis had to be taken to the hospital and put in a medically induced coma due to a subdural hematoma. That's a brain bleed. Now, fortunately for Adonis and for the rest of us, he survived that brain bleed. He did, of course, have to go through extensive rehab just to sort of regain his ability to, perform physically, like just walking and whatnot. But at least he's still here with us. We know far too many fighters have passed away from a subdural hematoma. So I will make a separate video just about subdural hematomas in general. But my point is here that, Vostik knows on a personal level, what a price there is to pay for becoming a world champion and for even daring to step in the ring and dish out punishment and receive punishment from another human being. He KO'd Adonis in the corner, and Adonis's head just really snapped back in a way you just never want to see happen. But I'm sure it wasn't just that one moment. It was likely an accumulation of things that led to the brain bleed. Now, my point is, walking from that experience, let's go to Vodstik's next fight. Well, he is to defend his belt against Artur Beterbiev. Ironically, both Adonis and Beterbiev are from Montreal. That's just a piece of trivia for you. No shame in losing to Beterbiev, certainly in maybe in 2020 hindsight. But Vostik did say after this, or many years after this fight, that he did not feel quite right and that he was taking blows to the back of his head. Now, if you watch that fight, I can see why he felt he was getting hit in the back of the head, and that's because to avoid Beterbiev's punches, he was bending over at the waist and kind of weaving under the punches. But the problem is, Vostik didn't use his feet enough to get all the way out of the way, and so a lot of times Beterbiev just throw sort of an overhand kind of arcing right hand, and that would kind of glance off the back of Vostik's head. So even though Beterbiev was not hitting directly down on Vostik's skull, I'm sure that an accumulation of glancing blows to the back of his head did not feel good. I mean, I've gotten hit in the back of the head in amateur fights and in sparring, and even just one hard shot to the back of the head, you do not feel good. So that said, between the 10th and the 11th round, apparently Teddy Atlas, I think, said something to Vostik like, he's trying to, rouse him up to win the fight, and he says something like, come on, you're the better champion. And meaning that each man, Vostik and Beterbiev, they each held a belt. So now Vostik says many years later that he knew going into that 11th round that he wasn't right, and that he felt that he had been lacking in his training camp leading up to that fight. And he also says, I'm very pragmatic, meaning, all these admonitions and all the histrionics from Teddy Atlas aren't going to, con him into thinking he can win this fight, so to speak. But nevertheless, Vostik goes out there for the 11th round. He gets dropped twice, and after the second drop, the referee says to him, hey, one more time, I'm stopping the fight. Because I guess with that, either in that location or for those belts, there is a 3 knockdown rule. But regardless, moments later, Vostick winds up taking a knee, and the referee waves the fight off. Now, of course, and again, in retrospect, there's absolutely no harm, or there's no shame in losing to Beterbiev. I mean, Beterbiev's beaten everybody he's gotten in there with. He's KO'd. I don't know if he's KO'd every single one of his opponents, but almost, if not all. Regardless, here's where it got a little nasty, in my opinion, in terms of media coverage, because apparently Max Kellerman said something about Vostick quitting. Now, I don't know. I'm sure he used the word quit, and here's why. Max got so much grief for saying that Vostick quit that he had to come back on and do this whole pseudo apology. He almost doubled down on what he said, but the gist of it was, Max got so much negative feedback from the public telling him, don't say that this man quit. He did go out there for the 11th round. He went out on his shield. I mean, he didn't get KO'd, but is that really what you wanted him to do? I mean, look at who you're speaking about. This is a man who, the best moment where he achieved his lifelong dream of becoming a world champion came with a huge cost for his opponent in Adonis Stevenson. I mean, now you're telling the guy, oh, well, you're a quitter because you didn't go out, like you didn't get knocked the heck out. Like, that's like, how dare you make that statement? Number one. Number two, it's like, so then Max doubles down and says, well, I guess I shouldn't have used the word quit. I should have said, well, he'd had enough. It's like, dude, who are you to decide, that this guy's had enough? And if he has, like, you don't get to pass judgment on it. Max is trying to say, oh yeah, well, it was, looking at his body language, this, that, and the other. It's like, look, even if the guy literally said, on his stool, hey, I'm done, I'm not going to go out for the 11th, you still can't begrudge him that, because he's the one out there. He's the one getting hit. And he's the one that's got to look out for his own best interest in the long run. I mean, how much is Teddy Atlas going to, as much as trainers care about their fighters, I mean, in the end, it's the fighters got to look out for themselves. They got to go home to their family. I just think there's no place for media to pass judgment on a fighter in that situation, especially when Vostick got off his stool and went out there. Now, what could Max have said? He could have said Vostick's body language doesn't look confident, or he could have said a lot of other things, but I feel that no matter what the language he chose, like, oh, Vostick's looked like he had enough, like, you're still passing judgment on him, and it's not okay, because you get to sit on a chair in your suit in a studio in front of a camera, and no one's hitting you, so you don't get to judge the human being who's in the ring. Let's also consider not only the context of Vostick and Adonis, knowing full well that Adonis Stevenson suffered a brain bleed, but sometime during that same time frame, I think Patrick Day passed away from also from a subdural hematoma that he got knocked out in the ring and never recovered from the subdural hematoma. So given the context of these events, I just feel like, where do members of the press get off thinking they can make these kinds of statements? Now, I'll jump forward to present moment. Of course, now we have far more people just using social media. But again, we have people who are basically non-players, right? They never even worked out, never even hit the heavy bag for 180 seconds, and they're passing judgment on fighters. Now, the danger with that is that, unfortunately, you get a bit of this pile-on mentality where people start throwing in other aspects to add fuel to the fire. And so then you wind up getting these things, these theories or these accusations like Fury's loaded gloves. And the only reason that that gained any traction is because simply like volume of these social media people who I guess just have a large enough reach to kind of keep reiterating this, and then more and more folks just join in on the pylon. And somehow, as they say, you repeat a lie often enough, it becomes the truth. So somehow this actually becomes a point of discussion of Tyson Fury putting an egg weight in his glove, which is absolutely the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. Because just go take a rock. You don't even need to go out and buy an egg weight. Take a little rock, grab it in your fist, put your fist in a glove, go hit the heavy bag. If you want, you can wrap your hands. Or wrap your hands, stick the rock in the glove, then put your fist in, go hit the heavy bag. Tell me how good your hand feels when you're done with that. Just do it for one round. Or if you think the heavy bag is too artificial, ask one of your brilliant friends. Birds of a feather flock together. Ask one of your real genius friends to stand there and be a sparring partner with you while you hit them with that loaded glove. Again, tell me how good your hand feels after that. So my point being this, it's like media, like the actual hired professionals who sit in studios, I feel they just never have a right to pass judgment on a combat sports athlete. They never have the right to call any of us quitters. And here's the truth on Max Kellerman. He quit before he even got started. Did you know that Max Kellerman and his brother actually trained in boxing? I believe this was probably back either in the late 80s or early 90s at the gym that used to be near Times Square. I believe his trainer might have been a fellow that we called Elliot Ness. It's not his real name, but I think his first name was Elliot. I don't know, maybe somebody from the New York boxing scene that goes way back remembers. But point here is that, Max, you actually did try to train in boxing, and for whatever reason, you quit. You were the quitter. You didn't follow through with, as far as I know, an amateur career, and certainly not a pro career. So you became a professional talker, not a professional fighter. Anybody who's a professional talker doesn't get to pass judgment on professional combat athletes. Well, let me know what you guys think, and thank you so much for listening.